the tech holds out, everything works properly. Let's just start with a really big open-ended question, David. What has this, coronavirus and lockdown and all that? What's it done? What's the impact been on the Toronto Wolfpack?
Well, like all clubs and all sports, all leagues, obviously it's meant that everyone has to go back to almost ground zero on what is going to happen for the rest of the season, what is going to be the impact for 2021 and going forward. So obviously when the lockdown occurred and games were suspended, there was a lot of unknown questions, and so therefore, we had to figure out, what do we really want to achieve and what do we really want to look forward to. And we've always said that whatever happens this year, we really need to be concerned about what is the best way to position not just the Wolfpack, but Super League for 2021, because decisions this year will impact 2021. And so we want to make sure that the 21 season is going to be an absolutely brilliant one. So whatever decisions on the remainder of the playing schedule, the location of those games, cannot be impact 2021. This is our major concern, including on the player welfare side.
Now, before I ask my next question, you look like you lost a bit of weight, David. You've been in hard training, or have you been eating healthy? What's the story?
Well, I mean, and in my regular discussions with Bob Hunter and with Brian McDermott, everyone is fully aware that our squad working hard to impress Big Mac. Because obviously in my mind I can play any one of the 13 positions. So getting rid of a few kilos was important. Somehow, like some of my other lifestyle choices, I'm not sure which one I agree with. I still think I need some improvement.
Now, we've been reading over here just in the last 24 hours about players haven't agreed to go back yet, and I think Mike Cooper said only 3 clubs, and then subsequently I think Gareth Carvell has said 6 clubs, and we expected fixtures beyond the resumption weekend to be announced. That hasn't happened. Can you give us an insight into what's happening there? Have your players agreed to go back? Is there a doubt that we will actually be back on the field on August 2?
Well, I mean, and once again, a lot of people, sort of find it slightly unusual that an owner doesn't necessarily know all the details, whether it be player signings or player transfers. I'm very fortunate in that the ops team led by Bob Hunter is good. So I basically get a briefing, when decisions are being made. And so I know that there are discussions. The actual details of those discussions I'm not aware of. I know that there are issues with a number of squads on the way that they're going to return back to play. But I think that the issues on pay and percentages is only part of the real issue. I think that the real focus should be on player welfare, to making sure that if players, when players in the games do proceed this year, that the player welfare is top of the priority list. And that means not playing too frequently, so that the bodies have a chance to recover. I think those are where we should really be thinking, as well as the risk of COVID infections inside of a squad. Because if you don't address those issues and it's not safe to resume, then resumption should not occur.
Right, okay. And are you satisfied that those conditions have been met, or you've still got your own personal doubts about that?
Well, I mean, I try to break everything down to numbers, and the UK has done very well in at the moment in reducing the COVID spread rate. But it still is a big challenge. And I refer to like the major North American sporting leagues where they've got, a much bigger budget to quarantine players into locations to limit, spread of COVID. But, you've got issues at the NBA level, you've got issues at the NHL level, you've got issues at MLB, Major League Baseball. You also have issues where a men's team in MLS has had to pull out of their tournament because they had a COVID spread. So at the last minute, a team had to withdraw. I think that announcement happened earlier this week or late last week. And the same thing happened I think it was in either the WNBA, which is the Women's National Basketball Association. A team had to withdraw, or the Women's MLS League, where at the last minute a team had to withdraw from the playing schedule for this year because of COVID spread. And you look at some of the other decisions that have been made in the Ivy League sporting fall calendar. They've canceled all Ivy League sporting fixtures for fall. And of course, it's a different environment in the U.S. compared to the U.K. So, I think that there is definitely a risk out there that with a resumption of play this year for any sport in any league anywhere in the world, that the schedule might have to be redone because of the last minute withdrawal because of COVID spread within inside of a team. And I think that's a really real risk, and it needs to be managed, and it's expensive to do that.
Yeah. Will the Wolfpack get to play at home this season, do you think, David?
No.
Okay. How difficult has it?
If you come to Canada, you've got a 14-day quarantine period.
Okay.
So any resumption this season, and any schedule, would require Wolfpack to play all of its games away.
Right.
And you also in our competition, of course, you've got Catalans, and so once again, they're not having schedule release, but like how is Catalans going to play the remainder of the season? Is it all going to be in the UK, or will there be away games in Catalans? What are the implications for that? Potential reintroduction of COVID travel bans or quarantine. So there's a lot of issues to be considered, and those things, it's dynamic. You can't just make a decision and ignore what is happening day to day. So there's a lot of challenges out there.
You've fallen between the Canadian.
That being said, I think it's very important that sports resume, but it has to be done safely, and player welfare has to be the number one consideration, because players have families, they have parents, they have children, and what you don't want to do is to put that as a secondary consideration. It should be the primary consideration.
You've fallen between the UK government's assistance to sports and the Canadian government's assistance to sports, and don't appear to have got much of anything from either. How big has the financial impact been of that situation?
I mean, it's been a very challenging year, because it's for 2020, of course, we also do not receive any part of the TV rights in the central distribution, albeit from the history of the Wolfpack, our TV ratings at League One and Championship level have been nothing short of outstanding. In fact, our £1,000,000 games actually had better TV ratings than I think every single game last year and the year before. Every Super League game had better TV ratings, except for the Challenge Cup final and the Grand Final. So in our case, we don't receive government assistance on either side of the pond, and the Wolfpack has not received any part of central distribution, albeit we outdraw other teams as far as viewership around the world, um, except for the Grand Final and the Challenge Cup finals for 18 and 19. Now that's we have a lot of impasse in not receiving benefits, and of course not receiving what I think is should be an equal distribution of our TV right money. Because remember, that money is retained by the Super League, for their cost. So we have to get this matter resolved.
Right. So perhaps next year, David, you do want a cut of the TV money?
I think we deserve a cut, and I think we've earned a cut.
Yeah, yeah. David, last week there was a vote on whether the RFL and Super League should get back together again after a couple of years apart. What's the club's position on that issue? It was very close, the vote.
So, obviously, when the decision for Super League and the RFL to have two independent, administration bodies and to be run separately, we were, obviously in the championship at that point, so we were not involved in those decisions, and in fact, even though we're a member of Club of Super League, we're not a member of the RFL, so we don't have a vote.
Mm-hmm.
But at Super League level, as a 1/12 member club, we do have the opportunity to express our views. The most important, looking at the macro of the game, is that the properties, the media properties that the RFL have, the media properties the Super League have, there are some benefits in marketing those properties together to get the best television rights and to get the best sponsorship deals. So I think there's a way to increase the revenue coming into the game across all of the game in the UK. And I think by having both organizations market the whole range of properties, I think is a good thing. I think there is some benefit there. Now, other people might have different views. I think that it makes sense. On the cost side, there are duplications of efforts. And so I think it also is important to look at making sure that during these tough times, especially, that the costs of running Super League and the RFL be optimized. And I think there are some optimizations that can be achieved. So, as I say, not being involved in the decision or voted on the decision for the Super League and the RFL to go in their separate directions, the key is how do you use the strengths and weaknesses. So how do you use the strengths of both organizations, which are different, to actually improve greater participation and greater viewership of Super League games. And the way the Wolfpack sees our role is we're a great conduit to actually get wider awareness of the game in non-rugby league heartlands. So for us, we want to continue to be part of a process that grows the awareness of rugby league around the world. And of course, the most valuable and lucrative market, potentially, sporting market, entertainment market in the world is the United States. And that's what we see as our mandate, is to grow the awareness of this brilliant game into North America.
Yeah. So it sounds like the economies and efficiencies of a reunification would be something that the club favours, judging by what you just said. Is that accurate or not?
I think that in any business, you're always looking at maximizing, revenue and becoming cost efficient. Mm-hmm. So the information that I saw, my interpretation of the information is that there were some maximizing of revenue opportunities between the two organizations, and there did appear to be some significant cost savings. So for me, I think that should always be debated. Now, obviously, you've got some areas of conflict. For us, we can leave the past behind because we weren't there.
Yeah.
For us, we have a forward-thinking view, and you have to be cognizant of history and previous relationships, but we were never part of that. So for us, it's very straightforward, saying that if everything is as it appears, then it makes sense to do some sort of cooperation on growing the revenue pile, and this seems to make a lot of sense to do some sort of cost savings on the organizations by combining functions which are currently done by both.
You, I don't know if you remember Max Headroom from the 80s, but that when you see this back, you're going to laugh your head off. You look like Max Headroom bouncing around there. The other question I have is North America. You mentioned North America, Ottawa and New York, and those teams seeking to enter League One. Is that the right way to further expand into North America? Are you monitoring those two projects? What are your thoughts?
No, I think Eric is hard charging like always on Ottawa. I think that's a positive step for the game, and the nice thing, it's another Canadian team, so there's some benefits in making the awareness of the game in Canada higher because of the efforts that Eric's doing with Ottawa. So I think that's a very positive. The New York endeavor, I say it's a big one. It's a big ambition. New York's a very, very tough market. Two NBA, two NHL, two football, two soccer. It's a big market. It is a very lucrative market potentially, but it's also a very crowded market. So I think a lot of work has to go into prepping, for New York. I think to make sure that if they do come in, it is successful. Mm-hmm. It's much more challenging than Toronto, and Toronto has been very challenging.
Yeah. Mate, you say obviously, you sound very optimistic about the future despite the hardships of the last 4 months for the Wolfpack. What about for the other clubs in Super League? The issue with not getting TV money is bad for you, but on the other hand, you're not facing the prospect of perhaps having to pay some of the TV money back because the players won't come back to training, or the games don't start on time, or you're not providing enough product. So that's going to be a big challenge for the other clubs in the competition. Do you have any concerns for the rest of the clubs in the competition?
Yeah, I mean,
Hello? I think we've lost David, everyone. The show normally goes for about half an hour. I think we've gone just under 20 minutes. So I think some interesting stuff there. Well, we perhaps wait for him to come back. I don't know. But his comments about, he didn't want to say which way the club voted regarding putting Super League and the RFL back together, but he did indicate that they were in favour of that. He also had some concerns about the resumption of the competition, and if you've been following the press in the last couple of days, there's been some real worries from on the part of the firstly the players, saying that they feel like they're being railroaded into taking pay cuts. Mike Cooper said on a podcast that the only 3 clubs had agreed. And and again, if the games don't come back on time, as Gary Carter wrote in the Sun this morning, then the clubs are going to have to give Sky some of the money back, and so it has a cascading effect, not just on the games not happening and the players going on strike, but then not being on strike. But it depends if you want to call it a strike. But not only that, but then it costs the clubs more money, and their ability to meet their commitments sinks still further. So it really is a flash point for the game in England at the moment, and perhaps it's going to expose a few weaknesses that have been there all along. At the moment, the RFL have a big grant from the government to get themselves back on their feet, and the Players Association under Gareth Carvell is negotiating to allow the sport to keep some of that money, not have to repay it. So anyway, I hope David hasn't come back yet. So I think we might end the show here. But really appreciate your time. I think it was good while it lasted with Max Headroom there, and I think we just had some technical issues there where David's connection dropped out. So we'll leave it there. thank you very much, everybody, for joining us on White Line Fever Kicks this afternoon or this evening if you're in Australia. And don't forget the podcast is available. It's at Wooshka. Just to search White Line Fever Kicks. I'll be turning this into a podcast pretty quickly. Also, it's available on Facebook. Obviously, when I stop broadcasting now, it'll be available on Facebook. It'll be uploaded to YouTube as well, and you can get all your Toronto Wolfpack gear at Mascord Browns, MASCORD BRONZ, or else you can, in Australia, you can get it at mascotbrowns.com.au. Toronto Wolfpack jerseys, singlets, hoodies, everything. Yeah, Toronto Wolfpack stuff. Okay, I think that's about it for us. We'll see you this time next week. Goodbye.